Abnormal Andy, and Phantom Dark Dave. The Screaming Skull Podcast.
Welcome to the Screaming Skull Podcast, a place where horror fans can feel at home. I'm one of your hosts, Abnormal Andy, and my other co-host is Phantom Dark Dave. Hey Dave, how's it going tonight?
Andy, it's going good, man. There's a full moon outside. How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I don't want to see your moon, though.
Oh, I wasn't going to show it to you, bro. That's for Julie.
We're coming to you guys with a special episode today. We had one with Brian from Terrible Terror Podcast. We thought, hey, that was a fun time, so let's just keep the trend going, and we're having another very special guest on the show today. It's our friend Neil Fraser from over the pond, I guess, as they say, right?
Yes. Hi, Dave. Hi, Andy. It's been a long time since I've seen you, Andy. It's Well, I think I'm on like 3 houses since the last time we spoke.
You're always moving.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, people get sick of me.
But yeah, I mean, we're really excited to have Neil on, and so we brought him on to talk about a classic werewolf movie, The Howling from 1981.
What do you see?
The Howling. Somewhere in this city, in this human jungle, it begins.
Just try. He's right there.
What do you see?
What's there, Karen?
What do you see, Karen?
What's there?
Somewhere in these woods, in this primal, sensuous, secret place, lies an experience too terrifying for words. And now, all anyone can do is watch and wait.
Tonight I'm going to show you something. Make you believe.
The Howling.
So yeah, just to kind of start us off with this movie, I know for me, I've only seen this movie a couple times actually, surprising enough, and so this wasn't the first time I've seen it, but it's the first time in a long time since I've seen it. Dave, is this your first time seeing it?
No, it's definitely not my first time seeing it, but it is probably my first time watching it with a critical eye. And so I saw this movie when I got into horror as a teenager, and I didn't really watch it as much as I thought, and it's definitely been a really long time since I've seen it. So giving it the rewatch kind of felt like the first time. How about you, Neil?
It's been a good decade, I think, since I saw it. But I mean, I do remember the first time I saw it because it would have been 88, 89. I would have been about 10 or 11, and everybody at school was saying, "You've got to watch The Howling." Everybody was talking about The Howling, and you've got to see it. So I made my dad. I think we've spoken about this before, Dave. My dad and horror movies. He didn't like me watching them at that kind of age. And I begged, I was like, "Oh, it's a werewolf movie, really good. It'd be really good." And we went out to Blockbuster, we rented it, got back, and obviously, within the first 10 seconds, there's full nudity. I was just like, oh God. Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's been a good decade since I've seen it. I mean, I've seen most of the other sequels since. I think I remember 2, 3, or 4 way more than I did this one. But it's been great to go back and watch it again. Like Dave says, put a new sort of, new eye over it and see how it stands up, nowadays. So.
Yeah, I think for me, the scene, like, even though I hadn't seen it for a while, there's this one scene that always kind of sticks out to me, and it's the scene in the beginning. And Neil, like kind of what you're talking about, you get the gratuitous nudity right up front, where Dee Wallace is walking into like a porn shop, and they have those video booths or whatever in the back, and she's going in one, and this, other characters in the booth with her in the dark, and it was really a striking scene. It was just really kind of eerie with like the projector going, and she can't really see behind her. It's like dark and stuff, and then you have the sexual stuff going on in front of her. It was a really kind of a tense scene. You had a lot of mixed emotions going on there, because you knew like something was going. She knew somebody was behind her in the dark, but he like wouldn't let her turn around, and she didn't quite know what was going on. So that scene has always stuck with me. What about you guys?
Yeah, I think that might have been one of the reasons why I didn't rewatch this one for a long time, because that opening sequence kind of it caught me off guard, and it left a bad taste in my mouth. Because I don't typically watch snuff films or the stuff that's being projected in this particular booth. And so I was like, I remember not really liking the beginning, and I don't know if it's in the book. I've never read the book. But ironically, the fourth Howling movie has always been my favorite, and I had forgotten that the fourth Howling is kind of a remake of the first one, but they don't do any of that stuff in the beginning. So going back and watching this movie, I remembered that scene was in there, but I forgot how much of an impact it made on me. And so when I rewatched it, I was quickly reminded of how much I disliked it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, sort of rewatching it again, it kind of made sense why it was there, because she's investigative journalist, isn't she? She's doing like a story, right. So on this kind of weirdo that's calling and stalking people. So when you kind of look back on it, you're like, okay, I kind of see what they were doing. I mean, it's a very out of, I don't know, it was kind of a very sort of off guard kind of scene that kind of tonally is very different from a lot of the rest of the film.
Yes.
Yeah, and kind of talking about the story, just to kind of, if anybody out there hasn't seen the movie yet, basically the movie starts off with, we're following like a news reporter. Her name's Karen, played by Dee Wallace, and she is on like there's been like a serial killer kind of loose in, I think she's in Los Angeles. I think that's where they're at. And so she's a prominent like news broadcaster, like she has like, she's on like the local news, and she starts getting like phone calls from the serial killer. So she like convinces him to meet up with her, I guess, or he wants to meet up with her. I'm not sure. They don't really. You just kind of get dumped right into the middle of things, I think, at the very beginning. But so to set the scene, she is like meeting up with him at this like porn shop, and there are like some of her colleagues are trying to kind of monitor the situation. They have like a microphone on her somewhere, and they're so she's transmitting back to them about the audio of what's going on. And there is also police kind of standing by looking for her too. And so it's really kind of a tense like situation, because you really don't know what's going to happen with this serial killer. And so like during the course of the scene, the cops do come in and shoot. They just like straight blast into the booth. Like they don't even know who they're shooting at.
The young cop does.
Oh yeah, the young cop does. Right. It's just him. Like he's like, because he's like kind of like got the itchy trigger finger or whatever. Right. And so luckily they kill Eddie, the serial killer, and they don't shoot Dee Wallace or Karen.
Did you recognize who the actor who played the older cop by chance?
No, I didn't.
Oh man! And so it's Kenneth Tobey, who you would know from, let's see here, a couple of good movies. One of my favorites, The Thing from Another World, and one of your favorites, It Came from Beneath the Sea.
Oh, cool!
He's just like almost 40 years older than you remember. But yeah, it was really cool to see him. A little cameo role.
But yeah, so this movie is directed by Joe Dante. That's kind of a familiar name for all of us, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he did like Gremlins too, right?
Oh, he did several movies. And I was actually going to bring that up. I'll start with you, Neil. Do you have a favorite Joe Dante movie?
I mean, it is going to be Gremlins. I mean, it's.
Is that your favorite? Okay, I wasn't sure.
Yeah, it's again. This is Gremlins came out right at the right sort of time for me. Like I would have been 8, I think, when it came out. So it really came out at a kind of perfect time for me to be just obsessed with them. And like I've said before, my first ever film poster on the wall was Gremlins.
I thought you were just obsessed with Phoebe Cates.
A couple of years later, yeah.
How about you, Andy? Do you have a favorite Joe Dante movie?
Man, yeah, I don't know. When I was a kid, just like Neil, I was all about Gremlins. I had like all the action figures and stuff like that.
That's awesome.
So like maybe just from that standpoint, I would have to say Gremlins as well.
Gremlins 1 or Gremlins 2?
Gremlins 1.
Okay.
Yeah. I did really like Gremlins 2 though too, and I remember I was super excited when Gremlins 2 came out because I had the movie novelization I was reading through before I saw the movie. So I thought I was like cool shit because I had read the book first.
Hell yeah.
But yeah. And oh cool, Joe Dante also did Inner Space.
Yes.
That's kind of a cool movie. Not horror, but kind of a cool movie anyway.
Well, I'll piggyback right there off that because that's a little more sci-fi-ish, and my favorite Joe Dante movie is Explorers. For the same reason you guys said, when I was younger, I remember seeing Explorers on a cable channel, and that shit fascinated me. And I went several years of my life remembering the movie and not rewatching it. And so being an adult and then getting to see that movie again, it brought all those feelings back. And Explorers is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, he was really on a streak, sort of mid-80s, wasn't he?
He really was. But I mean, it's crazy because obviously he had done Piranha, which we all love Piranha, but not long after that he did this film. So to know that this was really early in his career is pretty amazing because this is a very good movie.
It does also explain a lot of the cast choices because there's a lot of crossover with a lot of his films.
I mean, yeah, you have a whole like host of characters. We already talked about Dee Wallace. You have Kevin McCarthy, which I thought was a cool little nod. He plays, I think, like Karen's boss at the news.
Yeah, Fred Francis is his name.
Yeah, and he was like he was in Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the original.
Yes.
He wasn't like a reporter or anything, and that was I can't remember.
Ooh, maybe he had that kind of vibe. It's been a while since I've seen it. Yeah.
But there's another movie that he was the boss at a news station that I'll bring up, UHF with the Weird Al Yankovic. But we also have John Carradine in this movie, which he's an old-time actor that kind of was in everything, or a lot of things, kind of. Yeah, so it's cool to see him. And did you notice who played Eddie, the serial killer, Dave?
I'm so glad you asked me that because obviously when I had seen The Howling for the first time, I was not a Star Trek fan. So when I was watching this the other day in preparation for this podcast, I saw Robert Picardo's name in the credits, and I was like, oh, that's cool. I didn't even know he was in this. And so when we talk about the opening of this movie in the way you described it, we never get a good glimpse of Eddie. We just know he's there. And so I still didn't even know it was him until later when we get to see that character again. And it blew my mind to know that this was his first actual theatrical film. Pretty amazing that it's the Doctor from Voyager.
I was going to say also, did a massive waste of Dick Miller in this film. Very, very short appearance.
Yeah, you know what's funny about that? He played the name of his character in this movie is Walter Paisley.
He plays Walter Paisley about 8 times over his career, doesn't he?
Yeah.
All pulled from Buckets of Blood, which is great.
Yeah, because Chopping Mall, he played the same character.
Yep.
Yeah. And speaking of Roger Corman.
Hey, the phone booth.
Roger Corman. Yeah, the phone booth, yeah. So Roger Corman makes an appearance in this movie, a small cameo. As does another horror director that we'll see more of in the future, Mick Garris, makes a cameo in this too. I was surprised to see that.
I love Mick Garris.
I didn't really recognize him in the movie, but he was supposed to be the man with the TV guide. So I don't know.
And
I don't know who that-
speaking of Mick Garris, like Mick Garris was like head of creation for the Masters of Horror franchise, and Joe Dante even did 2 of the Masters of Horror movies. So that's kind of cool.
They're very good friends, I think, aren't they? Joe Dante and Mick Garris. I think they're also.
Who wouldn't be Joe Dante's friend?
No, exactly.
I'll be his friend.
Oh man, it's funny. So I was just looking at some of the other cast on here. There is a guy by the name of Mashak Taylor, and you guys probably don't know who this is, or you may be.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Mannequin.
Yeah, Mannequin, but
Designing Women.
also
right?
he was the Designing Women. He was like the handyman in Designing Women.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean this movie is just loaded with. I mean, you have Slim Pickens. You have Noble Willingham, who always plays kind of the same type of character. This movie is just loaded with talent, and so it's really cool to see some familiar faces.
I'll join you, Andy. I'll piggyback off of some of the synopsis. So after you've explained kind of the trauma that takes place in the beginning, we're now going to deal with the aftermath of her trauma. And so she survives, luckily, but she's traumatized. And so she's going to go on the radio or the news station and talk about her experience with Eddie, because she's the woman who took Eddie down, essentially, is how they're filming it. And she can't do it, right? She's traumatized. She can't speak. And so they get her off air. And her, I guess, was this a psychiatrist doctor, recommends that she go to the colony so she can kind of rest up, recuperate, and come back good as new. And that's when I started to remember that Part 4 is a remake of this, because that's exactly what happens in The Howling Part 4. And so her and her husband, who he kept, one of them kept the maiden name, so he's Bill Neal, he's not Bill White. And so we got Karen and Bill going to the colony. And Andy, what's really special about this colony?
Hey, they like barbecue.
Oh, they barbecue. Yes, that's what it is. And there's also a nympho.
There is Marcia.
How'd I know you were going to do that? Yeah, played by Elizabeth Brooks. And, man, she gives no fuck about the fact that Bill is married, because there's one of the scenes where he's like, I'm looking for my wife. And she's like, why?
Yeah.
Rude
I
much?
can't help but think that she inspired the character for Sybil Danning in Part 2.
Exactly. Yep. Wardrobe and all.
Yeah.
See, the thing with me was that I'd only just started to recover from the horrific opening and the full nudity, and immediately she shows up, and you're like, oh god, it's gonna happen again. Watching anything like that with your parents at like 10 is horrific.
Oh yeah. I mean, especially werewolf sex. I mean, come on.
That silhouette was incredible, though. You can't lie.
Oh, yeah. I like the little animation there. I think they kind of like, I don't know what was going on, but it's like animated werewolves. When it was just a silhouette. And but yeah, it's cool. I liked it. I feel like that was probably another inspiration for The Howling 2. When they were having the werewolf sex in Part 2, and they were just like furry people. I think they probably got that from this first movie.
And this is a good time to mention that we're all three of us big fans of the entire Howling franchise. Though we haven't seen every single installment because there's close to 10 movies, we have seen big portions of them. And Andy, am I right in assuming Part 2 is your favorite?
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
Okay, and Part 4 is my favorite, as I've mentioned. Cool. Neil, do you have a favorite of the franchise?
Like you guys, I mean, it would have to either be 2 or 4. I mean, I'd have to say 2 because of Christopher Lee, but
hell yeah.
Again, I mean, they've been around for so long, and there's so many of them. It's kind of like the Amityville sort of franchise at this point, where it's kind of names are attached. Like the Howling name gets attached to stuff, and you think, oh, a new Howling, and then.
Well, I'll break it down for you real quick. Luckily, there's not as many of those as Amityville, or we'd be screwed, but we'd also be kind of happy. But would it still even have werewolves? I don't know. But you got the first one we're talking about today. You got the second one, which is the total representation of the 80s. That's Your Sister's a Werewolf. We got the Howling 3 Marsupials, which is basically when werewolves are kind of like kangaroos. It's kind of weird. You got Part 4, which is the original Nightmare, which is a very much made-for-TV vibe remake of Part 1, which is why I love it. You got Part 5, which is the Whodunit in a Castle, which Andy also loves. You got Part 6, which has got that carnival freak show, which is probably my second favorite. And then you got part 7, The New Blood, which kind of comes in. It's definitely got that shot on video vibe, but it tries to tie in some of the Howling movies and has a couple of returning characters. And then a long time passed, there was no Howling movies, and then there was The Howling Reborn, which I have not seen, and I don't know if it's just another sequel or a modern take on things, but I need to watch that one.
I think I have seen it, but I can't remember if it was dreadful or I got distracted, but I cannot remember anything that happened in it, so it could be for one or two reasons, really.
It's just an extreme of being really good or really bad.
Yeah.
So Andy, tell us, man, what else goes on at this colony?
Well, I mean, I guess the people haven't figured it out yet. They're all werewolves.
They're infested with werewolves. Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah, I mean, hey, who doesn't like a little... whatever. I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that. But, yeah, so, yeah, werewolves. And it's funny because I don't know if when this movie came out, if it was supposed to be like a mystery about what was going on. I think, with the name, the title, The Howling, that kind of gives it away a little bit. And also, like, even within the colony, there's so many, like, wolf skins and people talking about animal stuff, animal instincts or whatever. So, yeah, I guess it probably wasn't so much... It shouldn't have been so much of a surprise that they were all werewolves, I guess.
Well, I mean, they kind of show up pretty quick once you get into the colony, because after he turns down Martha, doesn't he get attacked? And that's how he gets scratched. The husband gets scratched, and then he starts going a bit loopy. Sort of. Does he not put his hands on Dee Wallace? I think he loses his rag with her, and he storms off.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, because throughout the movie, obviously, he's still wanting to have physical relations with his wife, but she's kind of not feeling it because of what she's experienced, and so she's still having nightmares of what she saw and Eddie and things, and so he's like, all right, that's cool, I'm understanding. But then they go to the colony, and now Marcia is kind of giving him attention, and so he's kind of being an ass to his wife Karen, so much so that we've already mentioned it, there's werewolf sex in this movie, and that's because Bill gets attacked in the woods, and then later he meets up with Marcia. They have their sex and transform into werewolves in a pretty cool silhouette, and the transformation scenes are really cool. We got to talk about, a lot of people really love American Werewolf in London, and rightfully so, but you got to give it to Rob Bottin in this movie. I think the werewolves are incredible. Yeah,
for sure. That scene where the scene a little bit later in the movie that we get is a great transformation scene. Even for some, like, I have a coworker that I was talking to him about this movie, and that was the scene that stuck out for him. Like, he hadn't seen it for like years and years, but that transformation scene still stuck out to him. So I feel like that's kind of like that just goes to show like how good of like effects it is. And Rob Bottin would go on to do The Thing and have
even
awesome
better
special effects with that movie. Yeah. So I mean, I think originally Rick Baker was attached to this, but John Landis actually pulled him off to do American Werewolf in London.
He pulled that friend card. He goes, you already told me you'd work on my movie first.
Yeah. But I think Rob Bottin did a great job.
How cool to get two big werewolf movies in the same year, though, right?
Yeah, that would have been really cool, yeah.
And both with kind of different, but both equally as good transitions from man to werewolf. So, spoiled for talent and werewolves at the time.
And I love the way that these werewolves look, because they're like 8 feet tall, 9 feet tall, and they have the elongated ears. You've never seen anything like that before. It's incredible.
It's definitely, I can definitely see how, if you've ever seen Dog Soldiers, there's a lot of love.
There has to be. Neil Marshall.
Yes. So there's definitely, like you say, with the big ears.
Hey, Neil, are you doing? Can I say this? Have you done work with Neil Marshall?
Yeah, I know Neil Marshall. Yeah. I've worked with him on The Descent and some stuff of Dog Soldiers. Yeah. So.
Okay. End of the episode. Awesome. We're going to ask you some questions about that. Sorry, Andy. Go ahead.
But yeah, this is really the movie that kind of popularized that kind of hybrid wolf/man creature look, the bipedal walking on two legs kind of thing, that we've seen in so many werewolf movies after this. You have the werewolf TV series like in the 80s that did the same thing, which is really cool. And then, so you got to give props to the werewolf design in this. It just inspired so many things that came after it.
Speaking of that, let's go the other way. Everybody knows werewolves because of what Universal Studios had done with the Universal Monsters. We had Werewolf of London, and then we also had the Wolfman from 1941. How cool that they played clips of that movie.
Yeah, that was great. Yeah, I love the they show clips from the Wolfman. And also after the end credits, if you stick around, there's that scene too that they put in, which is really cool.
I did not see that bit after the credits.
Neil never sticks around.
I got hungry because of the. We'll get to it.
Yeah.
I just got hungry, so I had to go and get something to eat. And I think
it's all that barbecue.
Yeah, well, there's like during the end credits, there's just a shot of a hamburger cooking the whole time. So yeah,
I can't. If that had been 10, 15 seconds or not, but they do a full like 2 or 3 minutes of that cooking, man. I couldn't take it anymore.
Yeah, but we'll talk about the ending here in a little bit. But that was a kind of interesting for the ending. But did you guys notice the score? I thought it was kind of interesting. The guy that made the score was Pino Donaggio. Is that how you say his name?
Oh, don't get me to lying. I think that's a decent pronunciation of it. But yes, I did, so much so that you can go on Spotify and listen to the entire soundtrack, and it's really good all the way through.
Yeah, and I think of course he's done some other stuff. He's done he did Dress to Kill, some Brian De Palma stuff, yep. Body Double. He also did the score for Seed of Chucky. So
sure.
I don't know if that's a good credit or not, but
of course it is, man.
We've all made mistakes.
Oh, stop.
Yeah.
You guys don't like Seed of Chucky? Come on, all the Chucky movies are good, except the remake, Child's Play remake. That's the only one that I didn't care for.
Okay.
But Andy, what do you think of the friends in this movie? Because Karen and Bill, they have their marital spats or whatever, but we got some awesome characters in Chris and Terry. They're really good friends.
Yeah, I love them because they did this whole investigative thing. So while you have the story of Karen and Bill at the retreat, at the colony, you have Chris and Terry kind of going through and investigating, and they do the little thing. So it was cool. And so they're the ones that talk to Dick Miller at the bookstore, hey, and I don't want to run brush past this, but that occult bookstore, that was awesome, man. I would love to
yes.
Find a bookstore like that.
That colony had everything.
Yeah. Have they ever existed, those books? Because I see them in movies, and you see them all the time. It's like they must exist.
Well, yeah, I think they did back then. Yeah,
I was gonna say, it seems like every time if you look for those books, you're gonna find a polished version at half-price books that's black with gold lettering that's clearly been printed within the last 10 years, and it's the same book that gets printed every 5 years. But you need to go into the antique section to find these books. I'm talking about the original Ouija board type findings, because finding these books would be incredible.
Yeah, and it was cool that he even had a set of silver bullets. I'm
just saying.
I want to know the story behind that, because he said that somebody ordered them but never came to pick them up. So it's but yeah, that was great. I love Chris and Terry, and we kind of see things play out because Terry goes to visit Karen at the colony, and that's where we kind of get some more revelations, because she kind of does some digging while she's there at the colony too. Because
they originally go and find Eddie's house, don't they?
That's right. Yeah.
And did you notice there's a happy face sticker? Yeah, on his board. It's the same sticker that's on. Yeah, it's the same sticker that is on the Peep Show at the beginning as well.
It just means that Eddie shops at Walmart.
Yeah. It's interesting because they didn't really talk about it, but it's kind of just understood that must have been a way for Eddie to mark where he's been or where he is, because we see that in the phone booth, we see the happy face sticker, in the porn shop we see it, and then in Eddie's apartment, we see it too.
It's kind of like a dog, right? If you think about it, wolves are like dogs, and dogs mark their territory.
Oh, yeah.
Look at me with the smarts.
Yeah. And, if it wasn't obvious enough already. Like when we get to Eddie's apartment, we see all these drawings of like werewolves and stuff like that. So,
I kind of imagine that's what your bedroom looked like growing up, Andy.
oh well, yeah, probably so. No, my parents probably would have like had me
At the psychiatrist.
yeah, or the priest. Probably more the priest than the psychiatrist, but
Andy needs to be exercised.
basically, yeah. Anyway, but
Did you guys recognize, or I wouldn't even say recognize, what did you think of one of the guys at the colony? TC was his name, played by Don McLeod, but he's the werewolf that kind of looked like Kraven the Hunter in a way. I don't know if you know who I'm talking about, Andy, if you know Marvel, but he had that sleeveless type vest on with a giant sash around the neck. I mean, it looks like Kraven the Hunter.
There were some characters in that group. Like, I think they tried to kind of make it sort of do a double bluff where you think, oh, there's a weird guy, he's going to be the werewolf, or the old guy that's to shout, oh, he's going to be one, and then like you said, they all are. So it's kind of
It's like a revelation. Okay, that's cool.
yeah, it's a weird mixture of people because you have kind of like these kind of backwoods people like Marsha and TC, but then you have like I forget their name, but the kind of the more of the yuppie people too, like the blonde-haired guy and his wife that was friendly to Karen.
Right.
and there was two police officers as well, wasn't there? It was,
Yep.
Yeah.
Sheriff and stuff.
Right. Yeah. So, so it's quite the mixture of people, and you're kind of wondering, how do these people end up together? You know. So.
Well, we do get somewhat of a reveal at the end of how the town came together, but I'm still wanting to know more about that backstory. I wonder if it's explained in the book.
Yeah, because the colony is led by Dr. Wagner, and he's kind of got this book out. It's kind of like a pop psychology book talking about the gift. I think it's what it's called, and it's talking about trying to find a balance between your primal animal nature and your human nature, and it's kind of like people, the general public doesn't realize, but he's like trying to actually be a therapist to his little werewolf group there, trying to get them to assimilate into human society and trying to get them to kind of go along, to get along kind of thing. And I mean, at the end of the movie, it doesn't quite work out for them. Yeah, but we kind of see them like struggling with this with John Carradine's character. He's like wanting to kill himself at the beginning, like throw himself into the fire. So we actually find out that fire does kill werewolves. I didn't really realize that, but
That's why you get the melting werewolf, man.
yeah. Talking about like, once they get to the colony, I think it has some really good tension, especially when Terry, the scenes with Terry as she's walking through the woods. I felt it was really tense because she makes that discovery because in one of the drawings in Eddie's apartment is this sea view. It's like a seaside view of like some trees and like a bluffs, and she actually finds that spot and is at the colony, and so that kind of clues her in. Hey, what's going on here? Why is this? Why was Eddie here? Like that tells her that Eddie was at the colony, and so I think it really kind of amps up the suspense here, which I really liked.
Yeah, I mean, it's especially since that just before this, they went to the morgue when they were doing the investigation. They went to the morgue to see Eddie's body, and it'd gone.
And you see all the marks inside the door, like claws.
And then obviously when she finds the picture and everything, and you kind of get the sense that what you think is following her is, it's going to be Eddie, and then she gets attacked again. It's when she finds the cabin out there. And that was a really awesome scene because obviously you had the tension of her going through the woods and then rooting around in the cabin, and then he just comes through the wall basically, just goes for her through the wall, and she chops his hand off with an axe to try and get away, which was a really cool scene because then you get that sort of revelation that it is a werewolf, or it used to be a man, because the hand starts turning back human once it's been chopped off, which is that was really good. There was even now, it didn't seem to be like a dated special effect. That was a really, really good special effect.
Yeah, it was. It was a great scene there.
Yep, I feel like it was a callback to earlier in the film too, because there's the scene where the dog jumps up in the window, and it's like a jump scare scene when she was reaching for something, and then this time when she was reaching for the file, then the werewolf took it. I thought that was cool.
Oh yeah, that was funny. She was in the doctor's office, and she calls Chris, and she's like, "Hey, I'm here," and I think she's kind of filling him in on what she's discovered. And he's like, "Well, does the doctor have any files?" And she's like, "Yeah," or a file cabinet. She's like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Well, go look for Eddie's, file folder." And so she does, and so she finds his file, but then right then a werewolf just stands up and takes the file out of her hand. So was he standing there the whole time?
Eavesdropping.
I thought that was kind of funny. Yeah, it's kind of funny, but I mean that's a great scene though, because you get the werewolf, you get the full shot of the werewolf, and
then it's revealed that particular werewolf is TC, the Craven the Hunter character that I was describing.
Yeah, later on we find out because he's his hand has been cut off, and he's like, look what your friend did or something, and
yep.
It's the movie does a good job of tying up all the loose ends, which I like.
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a good sort of once she's cut the hand off, there's quite a good little chase scene where she's barreling through the woods back to the doctor's office to try and call the husband, which is sadly where she meets her end, unfortunately, because she gets attacked this time by Eddie, I believe, is the werewolf that attacks her in the office.
Talking about that morgue scene you guys brought up, what is it with morticians and eating food
every time?
That's just gross. Because they showed there was a shot where there's a bowl of body parts or a bowl of guts, whatever, and then right next to it's a sandwich or something. It's oh man.
Well, at least the character acknowledges it, and then the mortician's like, it doesn't bother me.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought it was interesting. Bill, the husband's kind of journey in this movie. He's starts off the movie as a vegetarian, and then after he gets bit, he's just digging into that meat on a bone there or something. It's at a barbecue later on.
Yeah, because Terry makes that lunch for everybody, and she's like, "Oh, I forgot to bring vegetables," and then he's just like, "It's okay. When I'm hungry, I'll eat anything." But yeah, he's going to town on that chicken leg.
Oh yeah.
We mentioned earlier that, they're inside of a cabin. Have either one of you ever stayed in a log cabin? Because I have never spent the night in a log cabin.
Once or twice. We since I've moved up to Scotland, there's a lot more log cabins up here than there was down south. So a couple of times.
Oh man, that'd be cool to go to Scotland and stay in a log cabin.
Yeah, I mean they don't keep the cold out. That's the only problem you have.
Oh, okay.
That's why you got a fireplace, right?
You got to keep it roasty toasty, yeah. But
yeah. And I like Chris. Chris ends up being the hero of the movie, I feel like, in some ways. I like how it goes back. He hears Terry being killed over the phone or whatever. He hears a lot of commotion, so he knows that something's happening at the colony. And so he goes back to that occult bookstore and gets those silver bullets. I thought that was hilarious.
Did you notice the shirt that Dick Miller was wearing on that scene where he goes back to get the silver bullets?
No, I didn't. Well,
to me, it looked like the white version of Mark Patton's Nightmare on Elm Street 2 shirt.
Oh, really?
White with the black. It looks like identical.
I only go back and rewatch.
Yeah, it's literally he's only in that bit for 7 or 8 seconds.
Just long enough for him to tell him, "Hey, I gotta take these to a jeweler. They're real silver."
Yeah, because he chucks the money down and he's taking them off, and he runs. That's on the close up. Have a look at his shirt. I'm 99% sure that is the Mark Patton shirt from Nightmare on Elm Street 2.
Oh wow. So let's talk about this werewolf transformation, because this is kind of where we get. Well, so Karen goes to the doctor's office because she's looking for Terry, because she had her little. She got hit by Bill, and so she's wanting to get out of there. She's like, "This is crazy. Bill's acting weird. He's cheating on me and all this stuff." And Bill even says something like, "What did he say? Something like, you don't understand what it's like," or something like that.
Yeah.
She's like, "I don't want to understand," and she storms off. But she goes to the doctor's office looking for Dr. Wagner, and that's where she actually meets up with Eddie. And so this is when she discovers that Eddie is still alive. And man, that scene where he's like, I want to give you a piece of my mind. I thought that was
Yes.
so cool. And he digs that bullet out of his forehead. It's like, so he still had the bullets from when he got shot, I guess, like by the police. He still had him in his head or whatever.
Right, which is the coroner's job is to remove that. So I guess the autopsy hadn't been done yet.
Yeah, I guess so. But man, talk about, I mean, that's where we get this transformation scene. And I mean, he goes from Eddie to werewolf. And I mean, we get the full, and Karen's just standing there watching it all happen. You know, she's just kind of, I think she's still kind of stunned by it all. Like somehow she repressed the memory in her mind about having seen this in the earlier scene, but now she's like, it's all kind of flooding back, and she's just kind of like stuck there watching it happen.
I mean, I quite like the way that this transformation isn't quite as drawn out as the American Werewolf in London. It's kind of it's sort of a much more compressed kind of transformation, but still just as dramatic. I think it's. I mean, Dee Wallace does a great job with like the terror and you know, it's interspliced with the almost the identical shot of the snout coming out, face to snout.
And I like the way that the skin is like pulsating, because they had to like put the fake skin over and put the blood packets inside, but then the way it's like bulging and everything looks awesome. Let it know that I said bulging looks awesome. Go ahead.
Yeah, so, but then, you know, she does kind of like get her wits about her, and she grabs a jar of some kind of chemical and throws it on him.
I thought it was werewolf piss.
Probably.
Yeah,
Well,
because all doctors have acid just sitting around in beakers.
well, that's what I was wondering, like, was the acid? Then I saw somewhere where it was supposed to be silver nitrate. I was like, oh, that makes sense. So
Smart.
it's like some form of silver. So that kind of makes sense. But, I mean, acid, I figured acid would work too.
Maybe the doctor had that for his own protection in case the werewolves turn on him, which they eventually do.
Yeah, so, you know, later on we see that happen because, you know, we find out, you know, so, you know, we kind of get the scene at the end that we do of like a lot of movies where the villain kind of explains what's going on. Yeah, so you know, we get the scene where Dr. Wagner kind of reveals that, yeah, they're all werewolves, and explains that they were hoping to bring Karen into the fold, so to speak. You know, they thought that Bill was going to be able to convince her to join them, and but also we find out that Dr. Wagner was trying to get the other werewolves to be more civilized, but the other werewolves are not having it. They're just like fed up with him, and you know, they're like, yeah, even like John Carradine's character is like, the humans are supposed to be our cattle, you know, because as of now they're just having to feed off of this herd of cattle that they have. But you know, John Carradine's like, no, the humans are our cattle. We're supposed to hunt them, and then Marcia even busts in and talks about that the doctor was wrong, and that we don't want to live like this anymore. We want to go back to the way it was, kind of
And
thing.
it seems like Marcia has been this way since day one. She never wanted to go and agree with that way of life.
Yeah, I agree. She was kind of just she was never really, she was there with the group, but I feel like she wasn't really part of the group necessarily. She was kind of going along with it, but I feel like her and TC. Oh, and we found out that Eddie is also her brother, right?
Yep.
So there are three like siblings, and so they were all and like, what was the deal with like Eddie? So Eddie's a serial killer, but he's part of the colony too. So why would the doctor let Eddie just kind of go crazy and kill people? Was he like a loose cannon, or was this all part of the plan to get Karen involved in the group? I don't know.
Well, I mean, he was probably a serial killer for longer than he was a werewolf, I would assume.
Oh, okay.
And so maybe they came into the fold late. I don't know.
They never, like you say, they never explain that. I mean,
It's probably in the book.
oh, I'm sure. Because I read somewhere that they may well have said it in the film, but they don't need a full moon. They can shapeshift at will.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And I don't recall that being specifically referenced in the film, unless I missed a bit during his big.
It would explain it, because there's scenes where, I mean, it appears they're transforming in the drop of a hat just because they want to.
Well, also it's one of the few werewolf films where they very rarely even show a moon, like because normally they preempt it, but they'll show a full moon rising,
Sure.
and then oh, there we go. But they don't do that in this, so I don't know whether I read that. Maybe it was a synopsis part of the novel or something. But I did read somewhere that says they can shapeshift at will in this.
Yeah, I remember hearing some of the, or reading. I think you see some of the newspaper clippings, or you kind of hear some of the news broadcasts about the serial killings going on. I think they mentioned somewhere that some of the victims looked like they had been eaten or attacked by an animal. So whether or not he was a werewolf before he started killing, he definitely was at some point while he was killing people in Los Angeles. So,
Hey, Andy, would you rather be killed by a serial killer or a werewolf?
if I got attacked by a werewolf, then I could be a werewolf too. But I guess if he kills me, then I'm not going to be a werewolf.
So would you rather be a werewolf or get killed by a serial killer then?
Oh, I'd rather be a werewolf.
Okay, just making sure we're on the same page.
Especially if you can do it at will, you don't need the full moon, which means that you can just save it. You can just be normal.
No, I know Andy. He just wants to have werewolf sex
Oh, that goes without saying.
by the fireplace. But
I was going to say there must be a category for it somewhere, and then I'd realize before I just can't. Of course, there is. There's
subgenre werewolf sex.
Oh yeah.
What did you guys think of the scene at the end whenever they get attacked in the car, and so they end up killing the sheriff with the silver bullets and then have to take the sheriff's car, and then there's just a scene where there's like 7 or 8 werewolves outside. Like even though the town is going to be werewolves, it was so cool to see so many at one point.
Yeah, I agree. I thought that was cool to see that shot of the werewolves kind of chasing after the car. And I thought it was funny, kind of backing up a little bit, when Chris shows up with the rifle. The werewolves are like, oh, yeah, you can shoot us, whatever, we don't care. But Chris is like, no, I've got silver bullets. Like, yeah, whatever. And so he
Silver
shoots,
my ass.
Yeah, so he ends up shooting TC. TC's starting to change and to attack him, and he shoots TC, and TC ends up dying. And like, oh shit, he really does have silver bullets. I thought that was a cool scene.
Yeah, I mean, they also the mixture of that, and then obviously we know that fire kills them, so they set fire to the barn, and before they try and escape. So it's a great chase scene, and really well done, especially for what was this, 81?
Yeah,
81.
Yeah, really good for 81. Like better than some stuff that you see now. So.
Well, and then, as they escape the barn, they get in the car, like I said, and they're driving away, in the cop car. I know it's extremely predictable, but for some reason, I didn't see it coming, because we had seen so many werewolves outside of the car, I didn't think twice to check the back seat because there's a werewolf in the car.
Yeah. And they make a comment just like a few minutes earlier. I think Chris is asking, hey, where's Bill? And she's like, I think they killed him. Like, we don't really know what's happened to Bill up to this point. I mean, we knew that he's a werewolf, but he wasn't with the group of werewolves at the end in the barn. So we don't really know. I feel like we've kind of forgotten about him at this point. But yeah, this werewolf springs up out of the back seat. I think that Karen actually is the one. Yeah, Karen
she gets bit on the shoulder.
Yeah, and then she ends up shooting him with a silver bullet, I think, right? With the rifle.
Oh, it was awesome because it was like a no-look shot just over the shoulder. Bam!
Yeah.
And then when, like Neil said earlier, once a werewolf gets killed, it reverts back to its human form, and that's when it's revealed that it's, her husband, Chris, because you see the tattoo on his arm and the bite mark.
Yeah, so yeah, we see it's Bill, and so Chris and Karen, they head back to the city, and we don't know quite how much time has passed, but like the next scene is like she's gonna be on the newscast again. She's like she's telling everybody that she's like well enough to be a reporter again, or to be on TV. So so this is kind of like her first newscast back, and so they're doing the story about the colony and how like the people died, in a fire, and they said it was like another Guyana thing, which I think they're talking about the Jonestown thing, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So they want her to be on the show so she can give a first-hand report on what happened there.
Yeah, I mean, she starts sort of saying, and then sort of cuts herself off, and it's like, I'm going to show you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She hijacks that broadcast, man.
Yeah, she's just like, she doesn't wait. She just starts changing right there. Like,
this is when it becomes cool that you can turn into a werewolf anytime you want.
Well,
Right,
I quite like the fact it keeps cutting to the gallery, and they're like, let it run, let it run.
Yeah.
It's just great stuff.
Yeah, Kevin McCarthy's wanted to like switch over to another editorial or something, and Chris is like, no, let it go, let it play out, and so she's not, she kind of diverted from the teleprompter, and so yeah, she starts talking about werewolves and so she starts changing, and we get another transformation, and she kind of looks over at Chris as she's transforming, like, hey, now's about the time you want to do your thing, and so he actually. But before he shoots her, we get to see her transformation complete, and she's actually looks like a nice werewolf.
Ugly ass werewolf, though.
Do you know what? She looks like one of the Wookiees from the Star Wars Christmas special.
Yeah,
yes!
Yeah, exactly.
It was like, oh,
This is nasty.
Yeah, it's kind of a unique werewolf look. I've not seen a werewolf.
It is. But it was very sympathetic, though, because we get to see a tear roll from her face. And that's like the first time we've ever seen that it's kind of torturous, not only physically, but on her soul as well, because she knows what's happening.
I was going to say, as you notice, as Chris starts blasting, then the gallery's going, cut to commercial, cut to commercial.
Yeah, cut to a dog food commercial. How about that?
Oh, yeah. Well, and I guess supposedly her look, why it was kind of different than the other werewolves was because she, like, Karen had still retained her humanity or whatever. Like, she was still trying to not give in to the monster inside of her kind of thing.
She gave in to the Wookiee side of her.
Yeah. But it's kind of a little bit of a downer ending, because our heroine, and, she gets killed. She sacrifices herself for the greater good to tell everybody that, hey, werewolves are among us kind of thing. And, but it's kind of in vain because as we see, it's kind of funny. We get this montage of shots with like, we see these different people at their reactions to the newscast. And, there's like some kids watching it. They're like, wow, and
the news is awesome.
Yeah, the parents are like, what are you watching? And like, we're watching the news. And some guys at the bar are like, man, that lady just turned into a werewolf and they just shot her. And the other guy's like, oh, the things they do with special effects. So it just goes to show that you can show people anything and they're not going to really believe it. And I think even in this day and age, if somebody was on TV and did a transformation, I bet that most people would not believe it. They would be like, oh, it's special effects,
Yep, well, it gives us that stinger of an ending because not only is it so much so that our final girl essentially dies in the film, we also find out that a character that we thought died had survived.
Yeah, because we got one of the bar patrons. He's like, hey, bartender, put on a Philly cheesesteak for me and a hamburger for the lady. And so the bartender's like, well, how do you want your burger? She's like, she just turns to the camera and she looks at it. She says, rare,
Oh,
so,
cheek.
I did stay and see this bit.
Well, good, because that's the actual end of the movie, Neil. We learned you can't kill a nympho home-wrecking werewolf.
No.
And rightly so.
Met some of those, have you?
But yeah, this is where we get the 2-minute shot of a hamburger cooking. So as the credits scroll through. So yeah, I mean, this is a great werewolf movie. I mean, I think people can tell that we really like this movie. It's if people out there have not seen this movie, yeah, definitely check it out. It's like one of the defining werewolf movies of the 80s. This and American Werewolf in London are kind of a pair. They both came out about the same time. And I also think there's another one called Wolfen that came out around the same time as well.
Yep.
It's a little
Edward
bit different movie. Like, I almost wouldn't say go into it expecting a werewolf movie for that one, but that's all.
That one's more of a wolf movie, and some of these have like that Native American legend spin on them that works really well.
Yeah.
But, one thing about this movie, Andy, is, yeah, in 1981 for sure, but only a $1 million budget, and it brought in over $18 million worldwide, so it did very good for itself.
Yeah, that's great to hear. But
yeah, I mean, the also this film does not feel like a 90-minute movie. I don't know. It just goes really, really quick. Like before you know it, you're 45 minutes in, and then I think there's only like 4 real sets in that. So you've kind of got the newsroom, the doctor's office, like the cabin, and then the bit at the end. It seems to be there's kind of just 4 sort of pieces really, and it just goes really quick. Like watching it.
Yeah, I agree. The pacing's really good. It's just like really fast paced, and things are always happening. So like I'm right there with you, Neil. I was watching this, and like before I knew it was like 45 minutes, or even for me it was like an hour into the movie. I'm like, dang, I didn't realize I had watched that much of the movie, because I guess I was thinking there was going to be more happen at the colony or something. I don't know, but yeah, it's a really well paced movie. I think it doesn't. I mean, it's just an hour and a half. This is a great werewolf movie for horror fans that have not seen it. Maybe some younger people that haven't seen this one yet. Definitely go out and seek it out. I watched it on Amazon. I rented it on Amazon. I don't know about you guys. How'd you guys watch it?
I actually own physical format of it, and so it was easy to just go pop in the VHS of it. But yeah, it can be a bitch to find if you're not willing to pay for it.
Yeah, I have a digital copy of it, so I watched it on there. I mean,
Cool.
there are ways to watch it, but I would not. I would never encourage anybody to go and find other ways to watch it. Support the film industry.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I guess I supported Jeff Bezos, but that's okay. I guess
That's a good segue, man. Let's talk about support for a minute. We got to talk about our guest Neil Fraser and support what he does, because he's been a longtime friend of both of us for a really long time. But we're also kind of some fanboys, and so Neil, let's give you the floor, man. Let's talk about Neil Fraser Graphics. Who are you, and what do you do?
Yeah, thanks. I'm basically a poster and key artist from up here in Scotland in the UK, and primarily I work in horror. And for the last 4 years, been creating posters and key art for either just doing stuff for fun, or got into doing it sort of professionally the last couple of years. So it's now my full-time job. Got to work with some amazing people, got to meet some amazing people, and get to do what I love. And it's kind of weird, like tomorrow morning I'm like, oh, I've got to get up, but I haven't got to get up to go to work. I've got to get up to do some painting. It's like, it's kind of this weird kind of life that I've managed to create and keep going with. And it's amazing, some of the just being able to do stuff that people kind of like, and then you get to meet people, and it's crazy. It's kind of, when you think, because I mean, I hadn't even started this when we first met, Dave. So
It was always a goal of yours. I remember,
we talked about it. That was me. That was like literally the beginnings of how this started when we first met. Was me saying, "Oh, I'd love to do something like that," because you talked about the thing you made back in the day, and you put me on to Jed, and friend of the channel. Jed,
oh, so you can say I inspired you.
Absolutely.
Oh man, little pat on the back. That feels good. Thanks. Well, now you inspire us. Look at that.
You don't get a cut of the profits, unfortunately, for any residuals.
Yeah, but Neil, you're even doing like horror conventions too, right?
Yeah, I've been appearing as a guest at a few horror conventions, which is probably the most bizarre thing to me, that like somebody would want me to go to Belgium and like go and appear at a horror convention in Belgium, or I've got a few lined up this year. And it's so odd. It's kind of
none upon which are in Dallas, Texas. Come on, Neil.
Oh, I did get followed by a Texas convention today, so you never know.
Hey, if Andy can make the trip, so can you. Same distance, right?
Yeah. No, I don't think so.
It's a little bit further, but It is my aim. My goal is to eventually hit some cons in America. I know Texas does the best horror cons, so
Damn right.
best horror cons outside of New York, I think.
You got Texas, New York, and then California, obviously your big ones, but you can't, throw shade at these small towns because they always manage to pull these conventions out of nowhere, and half the time they have the same guest and then they have somebody extra that makes you go, well, shit, now I need to go to, Arkansas for a convention or whatever.
I'm doing one near me in Glasgow in April. We've got Felissa Rose coming over for that one, so I'm really looking forward to meeting her.
Amazing.
Getting to hang out with her. Neil Marshall, we spoke about earlier, he's going to be there.
I'm going to go ahead and touch base with you. You need to get me something, Felissa Rose. We'll talk later.
Don't worry, I'm on it.
But, hey, let's go ahead and promote you, man, because we talk about places you're going to be. What if people want to look at your work? Do you have a store or a website or anything?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram, Neil Fraser Graphics, on X under Neil Fraser 78. But to be honest, is there anybody left on X? I don't think there's many. You can find my website, which is neilfrasergraphics.com. Facebook, again, just under Neil Fraser Graphics. And yeah, hit me up. Say hi. There's always stuff going on there, and when I'm not busy working on official stuff, then I do try and post as often as I can my own personal stuff. But we've got some exciting stuff coming up, official stuff coming up. So hopefully we'll be able to announce some of that soon. May or may not be something Terrify related coming out soon officially.
Okay.
But that, a couple of months too late to working with you guys on that, because it was October, wasn't it? You did your Terrifier episode.
Oh yeah, but that's exciting, man. We're big fans of your work, and so we're always gonna be like supporting you and following along with what you do. And once again, we want to say thanks for coming on the show. It's a really big honor for us to have you on here.
Oh, always a pleasure. Obviously, love coming on with you guys, and maybe we can redo Chud again.
Oh hell yeah, yeah.
I can go on my crazy rant about my Home Alone stroke Chud theory again.
Oh yeah. Okay, so that wraps up this episode, and until next time, I'm Abnormal Andy,
and I'm Phantom Dark Dave,
and thanks for listening to the Screaming Skull Podcast.